Hi guys. Okay, so today I want to talk about having expectations. One thing, expectations and family is going to be a really, really big topic. I don't have a script. I literally am saying this off my mind. So let's begin. Okay. So one thing about expectations, I feel like having expectations from someone, that whole concept to me, I feel like is a very hard and difficult kind of hill to go through in any type of friendship or like bond relationship. One thing I found is when you have a friend, it is so easy to lose your expectations and keep them lost. Like, I personally believe this, where if your friend wrongs you, you go, okay, I no longer have this expectation with you. You can either stay friends with them and not have the expectation, or you lose expectations. You go, this is not the person that I thought this person was, and you drop them. Or you communicate this feeling to them and they could better themselves and then your expectation could come back. Or you can be like, okay, well, they clearly did not take anything I said, which kind of in turns in my head kind of means I'm not valued here. Now, why I feel like this is a very hard topic in family settings or blood relationships is because you don't have the option to cut them off in most scenarios. I'm not saying don't cut off toxic family members. I'm just saying there are so many scenarios, so many things situations that I've heard where they just cannot cut them off. Like, it's not easy to cut a family member off, especially when maybe your religion might not permit it, or like you're financially dependent on your family, or there is like a plethora of many different reasons. What I believe, why I think this is hard, is because even your issue might not even be with the person that you're financially dependent on. For example, your father. You know, he finances your life. But I think where the issue kind of arises is, for example, if you have some type of beef with your sister or your brother, it is so hard to navigate that because you would kind of need to be at peace with them and kind of keep that peace. And it is so, so hard to manage that. And this is where expectation comes in. And someone did tell me this before. They were like, you have expectations from people. Let's just say, for example, a friend. You have an expectation from your friend, but you just met them. You don't know them. So your expectation is kind of valid in the sense of you don't know how they operate. So you can't just judge them. But it's different when it's a family member because you know how they operate, almost exactly how they would act, how they would think, because you did live with them for like many years. That's your blood type of thing. Like, I'm not saying that you know your siblings to the T, but I feel like to some extent you kind of understand their nature, the behavior, and kind of like how they maneuver themselves and like their thought process and their mindset. Like, I feel like that's something that you would know. So, having expectations from a family member after they break it, after you know they're going to break it, after you know their patterns, to me is insane. Yet I feel like this is always where we have our expectations is from family, because we say family is family. You should have expectations from them. And I feel like this is just something that happened. I'm talking about all around, especially when it comes to your moms. That thing of like your mom loves you so much no matter what. I have seen that. That is true. You could do anything and everything, and I feel like your mom will make an excuse for you. She will still love you. She might reprimand you for the mistake that you made, but in no world will she ever ignore you. Will she ever abandon you? 99% of the time. Obviously, I don't know the stats of it. And I've seen this happen where it's like their daughter or their son could be doing something like mind boggling, just the way they behave. It's not the best. But the mother will still be there. I feel like the fathers can kind of get like zoned out or tuned out from that behavior. But I feel like moms have this random hope in their hearts that they will change. They're going to change. If I'm more nice to them, they're going to change. But that's expectation, and it's the hope that keeps that expectation alive. And I feel like you shouldn't have that hope, respectfully. And I feel like this is why it's so, so difficult for family members to understand and realize that being nice to that one person will not change anything. It will not. That's the reality. And that's what I believe. That's what I believe. That's what I think. And I do stand by this. I do think that moms think loving their child more will make them behave more. What I personally feel like, if they're spoiled and you're spoiling them more, it's a very slim percentage that they are going to change. Especially when they're 20 something year olds, their minds have been developed, their ways have been developed. That's how they are. No one can change a person unless they're willing to change themselves. You cannot change a person unless they want to change themselves. They need to find it within themselves to want to change themselves. They need to look within and understand where their flaws are, and only then and only and if then they will change themselves. There's so many times where people do understand what's wrong and they still don't do anything. But like, what I'm trying to get at is that you have to understand that a person will not change for you. And if a person changes for you, I don't think that's love. I think that's manipulation, unless it's valid. Let me explain that. If a person changes for you for a few months and then they go back to their ways, they never changed. That was a manipulation tactic to get you, to lure you in, to trap you, whatever. If someone genuinely changes because they love you and they keep that change up because that change benefits them, sure. You know, maybe you have someone that they stop doing drugs. For example, we're not going that extreme, but it's an example. If they change that because they love you, and even then they need that self motivation, that self discipline, because respectfully, no one can change themselves if it's not for themselves. If that person changes because they love you, well, somewhere and somehow in that whole change, in that whole situation, they did play a really big part on telling themselves, I need to change myself because I love this girl. It wasn't, she asked me to change, so I'm going to change, if that makes sense. Like, they're very similar scenarios. So, when someone wants to fix their life, they have to be in charge of that, and they would have to do that by themselves. No one else can tell them to go do that, because 9 times out of 10 they won't even listen, especially if it's that same family member that will give them love regardless. Lower your expectations with family members sometimes, and that's okay, because maybe like half the times, if you lower your expectation, then you take that little conscious step back to keep that peace in the family, they could come approach you. And I have also seen that happen. So I'm not like saying this out of nowhere. Like, I have seen that happen where I have taken a step back and I've seen this other person coming and approaching me and talking to me and trying to hang out with me when I was trying to do that for so many years, and there was like no going through. It was like putting my head on a brick wall. It was talking to a brick wall. But once you take a step back, that brick wall could crack. I feel like if you're constantly begging yourself against like a brick wall, you're only harming yourself. If you understand the fact that taking one step back only and only helps ourselves, not anyone else. And I feel like if you're the type of person that wants to maintain those bonds and that like haha hee hee like environment in your family, I feel like, okay, the main thing you can do is to genuinely take a step back. And I feel like if you've tried your whole life to force it on someone, maybe taking a step back might help you. My personal opinion.